In the remote, forgotten hills of eastern Kentucky, where morning mist still lingers in valleys that time appears to have left behind, lies a documented case that has baffled historians for almost 2 centuries. In 1834, Reverend Ezekiel Morrison arrived with his 9-year-old twin daughters, Rebecca and Rachel, at the isolated Baptist congregation of Pine Hollow, a place so cut off that maps from that period hardly even noted its existence. Everything that occurred during their brief 3-day visit was carefully recorded in the private journal of Pastor William Phillips. That journal came to light in 1987 when the old church was finally torn down. Its entries describe events with such uncanny precision and unnatural accuracy that modern psychologists have examined them in great detail. Still, no one has been able to explain how 2 young children could hold knowledge that defies every logical explanation. The Morrison twins didn't merely predict events yet to come. They uncovered secrets hidden for decades, described individuals they had never encountered, and spoke of tragedies that took place long before they were born. Most disturbing of all, every single detail they shared turned out to be completely and verifiably true. This channel isn't meant for everyone, only for those willing to face mysteries that challenge our very grasp of reality. Before we go deeper into the Morrison case, please make sure you're subscribed, because we're about to reveal details most historians prefer to avoid. And let us know in the comments which state are you tuning in from, because what happened here in Kentucky might be closer to your own hometown than you realize. The story doesn't begin with anything supernatural, but with something far more unsettling: the idea that certain human minds might access information in ways science still cannot explain. Kentucky in 1834 was a place caught between wilderness and early civilization, where settlements like Pine Hollow lived in near total isolation among the Cumberland foothills. This particular community had been founded in 1818 by 3 families searching for religious freedom, away from the denominational disputes troubling larger towns. By the time the Morrisons arrived, Pine Hollow held barely 200 people, most related by blood or marriage, all governed by the strict Baptist principles that shaped every part of their daily existence. At the heart of the settlement stood a simple wooden church, built by hand from timber taken from the surrounding hills. Pastor William Phillips, a learned man who had left a comfortable life in Lexington to minister to these frontier people, kept the only written records of births, deaths, marriages, and major events. His careful nature would soon prove essential in documenting what was about to unfold. Ezekiel Morrison was a well-known figure on the circuit of distant Appalachian churches. Tall, weathered, with gray hair that came too early for his 34 years, he traveled on foot with his daughters, carrying only a worn leather satchel that held his Bible, a few personal belongings, and the journal where he noted his spiritual reflections. He had been a widower for 9 years, ever since his wife Sarah died giving birth to the twins during a brutal winter storm that kept their cabin cut off for weeks. The girls, Rebecca and Rachel, were identical in appearance yet strikingly different in personality. Rebecca, born just minutes earlier, had an outgoing spirit that drew people to her instantly. Her smile spread easily, her laughter felt real, and she spoke with the assurance of someone much older. Rachel, quieter and more watchful, often seemed to stand in her sister's shadow. Yet those who paid close attention noticed she frequently started sentences that Rebecca would complete, or answered questions meant for her sister before Rebecca could speak. What set the Morrison family apart among circuit preachers was Ezekiel's reputation for bringing spiritual revival to struggling churches. Stories followed them from one congregation to the next. Tales of backsliders returning to faith, of old conflicts finally resolved, of awakenings that lingered for years after they left. Some credited Ezekiel's fiery preaching, but those who watched more closely saw that real change often began after private talks with the twins. The trip to Pine Hollow had been especially hard. Late autumn rains had turned mountain paths into dangerous mud, and Ezekiel had carried Rachel the last 5 miles after she came down with fever. They reached the settlement at sunset on November 15, 1834, just as Pastor Phillips finished evening prayers, with the small group attending the weekday service. In his journal, Phillips later wrote that his first impression was of deep weariness. Not only physical, but spiritual. In the family, Ezekiel's clothes were patched and worn from travel, his boots nearly worn through from countless miles on mountain trails. The girls stayed close to their father, Rachel still pale from fever, Rebecca's usual brightness dulled by exhaustion, yet something in their eyes, an alertness, an awareness too mature for children their age, left Phillips feeling strangely uneasy. Over the years, Pine Hollow's congregation had welcomed many traveling preachers. But something felt different about the Morrisons from the very first moment. That initial evening, while sharing a simple meal with the Phillips family, Rebecca asked the pastor's wife about her garden. Specifically, whether the roses along the eastern fence had recovered from the blight that nearly destroyed them 3 summers earlier. Mrs. Phillips dropped her spoon, staring at the child in astonishment. The blight had indeed happened 3 years before, ruining her prized roses. But she had never mentioned it beyond the immediate community. When asked, Rebecca just smiled and said she had dreamed of roses while walking, and somehow knew Mrs. Phillips grew the county's most beautiful ones. That small incident, written down in Pastor Phillips's journal that very night, would turn out to be only the beginning of many events that would challenge everything Hollow believed about the natural order of the world.